Hello everyone, and welcome back to the BrightWorks and another match of Beyond All Reason. What I've got for you today is a match that I very recently played on everyone's favorite Supreme Isthmus. Well, that's not a good shot, is it? There we go, that's a slightly better one. Anywho, recently played this game on Supreme Isthmus, and we've recently done a game where I showcased some of my own gameplay and kind of walked through my thought process and all that, and I figured I'd do another one of those because it seems like it was received fairly well from a lot of people. So, we'll meet our commanders really quickly, and then we'll hop on over to my POV, and we'll talk about exactly the strategy that I'm going for. So, our red team leader spawning as a Cortex commander on the Southern Sea lane. It's going to be Exo Primer 3, clocking in at 42, whopping true skill, and going to be showing us what they've got as a Cortex commander on the high seas. Spawning in the backline as an Armada commander for the blue team, it's Justa 5, or maybe Justice, or Justas? I'll go with Justa 5 just to be safe, but it's an Armada commander going to be going into, presumably, a little bit of technological innovation right here, as all those Armada commanders are often one to do. So, yours truly playing on the front line right here, and you may have noticed already a couple of wind turbines have been handed over right here from the Tan commander. So Ronan going to be helping out right here, and it's something that I would say is probably going to be standard if you're going to go for this build. You may recognize this as the Cortex Grunt spam build. Yeah, you basically go for a single mechs and a single lab, and then you just start boosting out units as quickly as humanly possible, and sending those units out to the front line to reclaim as much as you can. You can see Lizard getting those mexes up and spamming those units out as well. With Cortex, it's a little bit easier because these units are cheaper, but of course those grunts are a little bit worse than the pawns. And I wanted to, the reason I chose this replay in the first place is I wanted to show that this is at the very least viable for Armada commanders to play, because of course pawns are so good at grunt to pawn combat now. They've received a little bit of a movement speed buff, just barely any kind of a movement speed buff, but it's enough that at this point you actually can get up and running and compete against some of the most pristine build orders out there. So you can see my teammate doing a wonderful job here as well. Deja is also going for the grunt spam, so you can see going 2 mechs and then into the grunts here. And you can see the idea being every so often you build a big spam wave of grunts and then you send some more resbots out there. The resbots are to reclaim both the wreckages of your own units, the wreckages of the enemy's units, and the wreckage of the rocks on the, well, not wreckage I suppose, but the reclaim from the rocks on the front as well. All that combined gives you enough metal to continuously spam out units while you're eventually getting the economy up and running. So you can see we've gone for about 30 grunts before eventually getting into constructors here, but they are on the queue, because eventually you want to expand your economy, right? And so that's the hardest thing about this build. After trying it a couple of times, I had some successes, I had some fails. After trying it a couple of times, I figured out that one of the biggest drawbacks is, of course, that you essentially turbocharge your economy in the early game, but if you don't make the right investments early on, you can actually find yourself running out of metals and resources and all sorts of stuff, and then your economy collapses. Extremely fast, your economy collapses, faster than you can imagine. And it can mean that you suddenly lose the entire game right here. So as you can see, we've got one constructor going to move forward and claim the metal extractors. We've got another one that's going to build some build power and then eventually into some wind turbines. Wind power, very good on Supreme Isthmus, as I'm sure you're aware. Means, of course, that if you're going to go for any kind of power production at all that's sort of just idle, you're going to want to go for that wind. Lizard doing a great job of marching forward right here. Still with a lot of metal in the bank, though, and this is the problem. If you don't get a build power up and running using that early investment, you can end up with the situation that the purple commander is in right now, where suddenly you've got yourself in a tricky moment where you have tons of metal and tons of resources, but you don't actually have a great way to spend it. One solution to that is, of course, that you can build thugs, which are slightly more expensive. They're slightly more energy dense, and so that's one way for your build power to be spent a little bit more effectively. But all said and done, it's not the end of the world if you just go ahead and pump out a constructor earlier on. One construction tower basically is sufficient for T1 production. You can see I start up my next plan. The transition that I'm going for is Centurion and Lazarus. Centurion on the front line make a lot of sense because even if the enemy goes for Rocketeers, they're sturdy enough to catch up to the Rocketeers, and despite looking like they're very slow, this was a nice catch over here, by the way, anti-airbot managed to shoot down the commander over the left-hand side. Even if you are, if they have rocket bots, Centurions are actually able to catch rocket bots, and so you can move forward and do a wonderful job of, aggressing with those quite nicely. We'll have this transition as well from Ronan, our backliner here, who's gone ahead and gone for, did we self-D those, or was there a bomber? I think there was a bomber that came across, but anyways. The tank commander here making a transition into vehicles. So just building a bunch of wind turbines to help out the frontliners, and then transitioning into vehicles because both of us are going for that bot spam, right? So those vehicles on the front, very, very efficient for shutting all that down. Trying to take an efficient fight over here. You can see engaging these grunts one by one, but my teammate pulls the trigger and actually jumps on top of this commander. Lizard out of energy right here. It was a beautiful read from my commander. teammate, and it meant that that commander went down very, very quickly. I always underestimate grunts, how quickly they can dismantle things like that. But that was a beautiful pull right there. Suddenly you can see this commander's wreckage is now left on the battlefield, as well as a whole bunch of these LLTs cleared out. Realizing that, it's time for a run-by. Boguk in position to intercept a bunch of these. Pawns sent on their little run-by and ignored, so that's why you see me essentially ignoring the fact that this commander's de-gunning them down, but a couple of them make it through, and that's really all that matters. And then I APM stole. Happens to the best of us, certainly. But there you go. Pawns running into the back line. Rocketeer's not really what you're going to want in order to deal with those, but if you, yeah, keep them still, then certainly it won't matter. Managing to take down some metal extractors, managing to pop the build power over there, always very efficient, very useful. And this was another fun play as well. You can see the Centurion and I splitting up right here, so effectively we're increasing the amount of surround bonus damage that we're doing right here. 2% left on Badbot right there. I knew that commander was damaged, didn't know how much, otherwise I might have committed with that Centurion, chasing down that commander. Trying to build the metal extractor here, not going to be the case though. Heavy laser tower, again, a big issue for bots if you're going to be pushing forward, but because we have the vehicle support behind us, this composition actually works out great. Northern Sea hotly contested right here by the Seafoam Blue commander, who's actually going into T2 already. My goodness. Pardon me, a very, very aggressive T2 as we start to see the T2 lab coming up and running right now. Hardly any economic investment though. I mean, we've got the mexes underwater right here. We have the commander, pardon me, died over there. Losing a whole bunch of metal definitely sucks, but we could eat up this T1 lab. I think this is probably about 600 metal off. Closer to about 1,000. Oh, we're gonna eat it up now. Oh, interesting. Interesting choices right here from Buttlepeter, who maybe assumed that they were alone on the seas. Not the case. T2 coming up right here for our red commander on the seas on the right-hand side, and with the front lines held quite nicely. I think it's a great opportunity to make investments wherever you can. Here's a Centurion going up against the Rocketeers. My tank commander requesting a repair right here, which is a great idea. You can see me fumbling the repair command, trying to desperately get the commander to actually repair all these. Got some idle resbots over here as well. Important to remember those resbots. They're very useful. Very, very useful. That's what I was talking about. Centurion able to jump on top of Rocketeers if they're not perfectly microed. And in just a couple of flashes of their light laser cannons, they can blast them down very, very nicely. Centurion's definitely one of the most slept-on units, I want to say. Yeah, they've got a lot of potential, and I feel like they certainly have a lot of room for investment. They can get a lot of value with the fact that they're so tanky and so repairable, and especially if you can find a way to get any kind of engagement against rocket bots. Peeling off a few of them and moving them backwards. Let me clear the screen there. Peeling off a few of them and moving them backwards to make sure that they're repaired properly, and keeping the others on the front with the Wolverines in the back for fire support. They're technically an anti-swarm bot, which makes them great for supporting artillery pieces like this. Shell shockers should definitely be utilized to attack things that otherwise we can't, though, and one of those is this heavy laser tower over here. In fact, I think I even comment about it some time or another. Boguk taking artillery shots, though. 86% on that commander. Not critical damage, I would say, but certainly not looking super fresh. Centurion marching forward. Also don't care too much about LLTs. One of their many superpowers. They simply have enough HP to ignore it. Oh yeah, kill with vehicles. I cry. Hoping that those Wolverines will be enough to kill all this. Wolverines with quite a lot of alpha damage when they fire on the same target, but these ones are kind of just firing wherever they want. At least said target has been enabled though, so they are sort of concentrating their firepower. Heavy laser tower in a little bit of trouble, and the Centurions are pushing forward. Losing Centurions definitely hurts. It's a lot of metal down on the beach right there. Boguk moving into position with the cloaked commander. Hesitant to that cloaked commander after getting my Centurions D-gunned right there. Hounds out on the battlefield. Definitely have me worried. At this point, I'm completely focused on production. No economic growth, aside from a couple of mexes and whatnot. We do have a T2 constructor on the way right here. T2 anytime soon, I cry out. And just in time, Dark Knight produces one and sends it up to me on the front line. Very, very nicely done. Perfect timing right there. The Centurion have made very short work of all of this T1 composition. It's the reason why I love them so much. They're so capable of dealing with essentially anything on the front lines here. The debate in my head about reclaim or resurrect right here, and I end up running away. Switching to my POV, you can see what we're going up against. Trying to judge how much of an army there is on the other side. One of the biggest challenges of Beyond Our Reason. So you can see with this fog of war, it's very difficult to tell how much force is actually over here. These hounds firing away is also incredibly annoying. And the fact that this heavy laser tower still stays up and standing is definitely a thorn in my side, certainly. One of the things that I would expect the vehicle player to try and take care of immediately is shutting down that heavy laser tower, since essentially they're the only player that can do it. Oh, nice connection with those rocket bots over there. Wolverine's finally moving back into position to take out that HLT. It's the one job they're needed for. But so far, mostly just focused on doing their own thing. One of my favorite plays to make, this is another play that I would recommend if you're an Armada commander and you're looking for easy ways to make your game slightly, well, not more efficient, but just things you can do while you're scaling your economy. It's producing ticks. 17 metal, 340 apiece means they cost essentially nothing. So while you're upgrading your T2 metal extractors, certainly viable. Bruce has moved over here on this right-hand side. Commander moves up the beachhead here and D-guns down the geothermal. Luckily, it was only a regular geothermal. Nothing too crazy. Ticks are pulled right now, and Sheldon are blasting away at this commander and Lavender as well. What a violent, violent move right here from the Lavender commander. Going ahead and blowing up our eco center. Demolishing our base right here, but luckily still cloaked, and so it means this commander isn't firing at the ticks, meaning that they get the opportunity to shut down this commander and eventually deposit that 1,000 or so metal into the base of the brown commander here, Dark Knight 227. Hounds at this point, essentially holding together this front line. Probably enough shell shockers here that we could kill this HLT in one blast. The reason it's so important is you can see it defines the line upon which we push, right? This entire fortification has been built on this HLT. Ja actually going for an HLT despite hounds being out on the field. Not going to work out all too well. You can see setting up a couple of barricades over here as well, just to make sure that my units have a little bit of cover from Rocketeers if we need to retreat. Centurion set on a repeat command, and you'll see what I'll do here. This is another move that I recommend. Reclaiming the ones that are damaged. Essentially, they rotate forward, take a little bit of HP, take a little bit of damage, draw some fire from some of these units, dodge most of it, take a couple hits, and once they're worn out almost entirely, you simply reclaim the ones that are basically spent. And this one over here, now that it's low health, you'll see me reclaim that shortly. Basically just making sure that I'm trying to get maximum value out of these units while the T2 economy is coming up. And it is coming up. Build power coming up here, and the T2 laboratory is queued up here as well. Brown commander's still rebuilding at this point. Navy looking tricky for the red commander. Trying to increase build power, trying to get submarines up and running. Tons and tons of metal in the bank, but just hasn't spent it. Submarine's going to start firing away their torpedo launchers. I think focus firing a single one is probably going to be slightly more efficient. Not the end of the world, of course. 900 metal versus 580 metal, so a single orca should outpace, or a single destroyer, pardon me, should outpace a single orca. These submarines definitely present a threat, though. All that metal in the bank, the red commander decides to go into T2. Not the worst idea, as long as we can hold it. Destroyers coming across one by one are going to be easy prey for those T2 to deal with. Or pardon me, these T1 submarines. Picking apart destroyers one by one, very efficient way of dismantling your opponent's military forces. And you can see my team working splendidly alongside me. Says, I can feed you to go T2. So the pink commander sending me enough metal to go ahead and go for T2. You can see we're going to go for a Cerberus, the geothermal plasma battery, and all those hounds. Hundreds of hounds. Not really hundreds, 20 hounds in total. More than enough, though, to push forward. With their radar and radar jammer equipped as well. This is a dangerous, dangerous composition now moving towards us here. Our last hope is the Cerberus cannon, firing devastating plasma projectile shots, and you can see everybody gathers around to start boosting it. Construction towers, T2 bots, Twitchers, all of us, all trying to hold our own. With the jammer up and running, the commander is not tremendously at risk right here. In fact, if I switch to my view, you can see as soon as that jammer moves back, the hounds are going to fire away. The jammer keeping everything nice and safe over here. But the front lines are slowly crumbling. Cerberus cannon 15 or so seconds out. Everybody's bated breath, holding on. Holding out hope that this Cerberus cannon will save us on the front line, and it certainly could. It does massive damage to anything on the fronts. And there you go. Cannon comes up and online, just in time to start firing away. And immediately starts connecting with some of those hounds over there. Units standing in front make it difficult for the cannon to shoot, is one of the biggest problems. But with the cannon supporting, eventually those hounds are driven back right there. Commander in a dangerous position right here. At this point, I was expecting T3 to show up. I thought we were going to be seeing some T3 units moving forward here, and that's part of the reason why I expected to, expected to be seeing some T3 units marching forward, and so the commander would be useful for degunning. Commander, stay safe though. Just barely. Just barely stay safe. And the T2 economy comes up and running. Spybot's now moving to the front lines, trying to provide vision. Air forces collide as the Yellow Commander is forced to pull fighters to try and shut down tons of torpedo bombers that are harassing the navy of the Orange Commander, who has done nicely to clean up most of this. Bombers over here are discovered though. Oh no, T2 fighters jumping on top of the bombers over the open water. Without their fighter support, those bombers are in loads of trouble. Tons of them are falling left, right, and center. This is a very unfortunate catch for the Yellow Commander, losing so many of those bombers right there. Still plenty of them up in the sky to do some damage, but it definitely hurts losing all those bombers like that. At the very least, the fighters are taking an efficient trade. Fighters will prioritize shooting down bombers, but it means if you have your fighters behind your bombers, then of course you're going to end up in a decent situation, because those bombers will take the majority of the shots and your fighters will win out in the end. Still T1 fighters though coming out from the Yellow Commander, who's instead investing primarily into spamming out the T1 instead of the T2. Geothermal battery firing away left, right, and center. Welders and sharpshooters coming up to the front lines now. Juno missile also charged. Another important thing to remember if your opponent is going for multiple spam. Putting those Juno missiles down on the map, they can definitely be the difference between a winning and a losing fight. Loads of sharpshooters over here on the right-hand side. I guess an investment to protect against Marauder. Should Marauder pop their heads out of the water, the sharpshooters would blast them down. Definitely feels like an overinvestment, though. I imagine a couple of pit bulls might do the work as well. Well, actually, I don't know if anything is going to do the work that you need. Despot firing away with ruthless efficiency. One of the reasons I love the Despot, and I guess one of the reasons everybody loves the Despot, it does insane damage. It's it's not it's not the craziest thing known to mankind. It's not the biggest turn of events to say that, but the fact that the Despot can reach out and hit as hard as it does definitely makes it a tremendous asset on any naval force. You can see dismantling these T1 destroyers like it's nothing. Just brutal. Constructor falls here as well. Those heavy plasma shots are resounding. The amount of torpedo launchers we're going for here is a little bit interesting as well. Investing heavily in torpedo launchers as if we're suspecting some sort of submarine attack. We do have a big attack of gunboat coming in. And I suppose those torpedo launchers will have their day. The T1 Navy has been crushed, though. Loads of that metal is going back to the Lavender Commander. Pardon me, the Lavender Commander right here. Apparently I closed that at some point, didn't realize when. Yeah, here we go. I mean, torpedo launchers, yeah, having a field day. Sure. Pretty much a perfect scenario for the torpedo launchers. They have the precision, they do enough damage, they can shut down basically all this very nicely. Ah, you know what? Not bad. That gunboat attack certainly could have been a whole lot worse had those torpedo launchers not been there. All said and done, I think that ended up working out phenomenally for the Red Commander. Going heavily into some of these energy converters as well. Just making tons of T1 economy. We have the T2 mechs up and running, which is great, but the T1 energy and energy conversion economy. At this point, you can see what the objective is. Tactical nuke across the map and directly into the pulsar over here. Unfortunately, Unable to kill a pulsar in a single blast. You can switch to our vision right here, and you can see exactly what we see. Didn't know about the pinpointers up on the front line. That would have definitely been a fabulous place to target with that tactical nuclear missile launcher, but alas, it gets blasted apart by the LRPCs here, and it means the end of that story. Shield generator almost up and running over here on the left-hand side, trying to make sure that our teammate stays alive. The orange commander has taken a couple of bad fights and suddenly ended up with a lot of dead metal under the sea. Badbot trying to break into the ocean here as well, but this pulsar mostly is doing all the work here. Cerberus cannon at this point with 29 kills and counting, 30 now. Plasma deflector, going to be great for shielding this from that LRPC firing away. One of the reasons LRPCs are dangerously inefficient is because you can accidentally you can accidentally end up over-investing in LRPCs, and suddenly you find yourself in a weird situation where you can have just a couple of LRPCs firing. It costs you several thousand energy per second, whereas a single plasma deflector just charges up and then deflects it all fairly casually. Fighter shutting down the torpedo bombers, and we have a Marauder heading across the map right now. Produced by the blue commander, just a 5. Getting ready to, get a little bit aggressive with those Marauder, trying to push forward with them. Naval force over here for the red commander, also looking fabulous. We do have those drone ships as well enabled. Dispersers, spawning up to 10 drones each, flinging them across the way. Essentially, they do great damage. They're decent damage, but one of the better things, one of the other things that makes them very, very valuable is, of course, the fact that they provide perfect scouting. So you include those in a composition like this, and they allow your ships to fire 100% accurately, or as accurately as they can anyways. Makes for a very, very efficient scouting vessel. Anti-air boat, flamethrower boats, the brimstones going down right here. Open up the sky and all that. Where my Valorant players at. And this battle has been thoroughly won. No reason these despots shouldn't push forward and win this right now. This naval lab should be surrendered. We do have ducks coming out, and ducks are pretty much the perfect counter to despots. The best submarine in the game, as Hornet puts it, and I think I wholeheartedly agree. And we're going to reclaim the lab even. Not a bad idea. Won't go through all the way, but of course we can always reclaim the wreckage anyways. Ducks are going to be trouble, though. Certainly going to be trouble. Lavender Commander loses the T2 lab, and that does mean the Red Commander is free to invest in whatever they so choose. Tick spam countered slightly by the Juno, as those ticks are routed through it and they do get shut down. Either forcing that opponent to invest in pawns in order to do that. Whoa, self-destruct on the Aphis right there. A valiant sacrifice from Elydra, the Orange Commander self-destructing the Aphis to take down the Marauder, rather than let them leak into the backline. What a self-sacrifice right there. Our Orange Commander blowing up his own base to make sure that nobody in the backline was injured in that attack. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sacrifice right there. No Aphis, or no anti-nuke over here, by the way. No anti-nuke on the fronts either. We have the T2 Constructor. We may as well. But you can see the plan here. Continuing to spam forward right here. Since they've invested in all of this high power, super pinpointed static defense, the sharpshooters, the pulsars, all that sort of stuff, the tick, the humble tick, is the mightiest solution to that problem. The other thing is that because most of these metal extractors have been denied, but not necessarily taken, it means that this is actually a great position to spam ticks forward in, because, of course, it essentially turns this into a no man's land. A little bit of a run by over here on the right-hand side. Low energy for the Orange Commander, who just, again, lost all of their Aphises, their sweet, sweet Aphises. At the very least, the advanced Geo on the hill remains standing. It means, of course, that they can go ahead and continue playing. Definitely tricky to rebuild from that situation, though. E-converters coming online right now. Loads more build power as well. Trying to get the economy into a suitable position for a push. The yellow commander going for a bot lab here. I'm gonna go for a T2 constructor. Interesting. Going to start up some E-converters apparently. Placing them down singularly rather than as a big group. Interesting decision. The blue commander going for that T1 infrastructure. Yeah, building loads and loads of T1 E-converters instead of going for the T2. Makes a lot of sense since you can get butlers to do it and they do it really efficiently. These effectively only cost energy too, so you don't actually dump much metal into them. It does make for a very efficient economy. all said and done, these T1 converters cost 270 metal, as opposed to the T2 ones, which cost a couple hundred metal apiece. It's definitely an interesting way of doing it, especially when you have plenty of space, and you know your air player's going to keep you safe from bombing, because obviously a bomb or two would be very, very, yeah, one or two bombers would be very dangerous over here. Now this is interesting to see that this team has gone for some mines over on this right-hand side, because ironically, we've done the same thing. Yeah, everybody realized, hey, wait a second, why don't we build some mines and send them over here? I think I had some Twitchers queued. Yeah, some Twitchers queued to go lay a bunch of landmines over on this side. Somebody else, yeah, was building a bunch of mine layers as well. So it's funny that in that little pause that you saw flick across the screen right there, everybody realized, hey, wait a second, we probably want to mine that side of the map. Don't know if it would have happened otherwise, but it was funny to see that both teams ended up doing that. The other thing, the other strategic move that I loved a whole lot was the, I believe it was the yellow commander. Yeah, Waterboy suggested that the red commander put a line of radar jammer boats right over here, just in a big line over here. And essentially the idea being to fill an area with radar jammers so we can move planes through without them being detected. I thought that was a really clever idea, so that you can move even T1 fighters through without them being scouted. Definitely a really, really neat idea. Yeah, there you go. You can see those radar jammer boats being produced right now. The jammer boat's actually producing a massive area here, so you can see they do cover a huge field of area, so putting them over in position, definitely a great play. Wanted to point that one out because it was one of my favorite plays in this game. Nuclear missile coming up right here for the green commander in the back line. I guess having a little extra metal and figures we'll spend it on something like that. Meanwhile, during that pause, we did lose a player. Not the end of the world, but it meant that I inherited a T2 Cortex facility. And when you inherit a T2 Cortex facility, there's one unit that always comes to mind, and it's the thermonuclear bedbug, the advanced amphibious crawling blob, the scuttle, with 540 metal, and yeah, 540 metal, and 26,000 energy. This is another thing I wanted to know, is what the hell is going on with this commander. So commander is cloaked and on hold fire and still attacking. Not sure exactly why. Not sure what the hell happened that made this commander decide that that was the right course of action. Meant to go sneak in here and go, yeah, capture a couple of these ducks. Ended up accidentally being, yeah, a completely different story as this commander died. Something went terribly wrong right there as my commander decided to take it upon himself to devastate himself and all those ducks, but at the very least, killing those does mean that no more are underwater to harass these boats. A valiant sacrifice? Maybe. A sacrifice nonetheless. More APHIS economy coming up and running right now. Trying to make sure that the APHIS scaling continues at a pace. Always very tricky to do, but when you're just in charge of spamming ticks like I am right now, it does make it relatively easy. Their costs are very minimal, and it's one of the reasons I can go for things like this. Oh, interesting. They actually had an anti-stealth generator. I wonder where that's at. Somewhere over here. Sometimes the little symbol is easier to find than the actual thing. I can't see it, but somebody noticed that there was a stealth unit over here. Interesting. That's why these units were parked over here. I was very curious why on earth these units were parked over here. You'll see the play that I'm going for, sending a Juno missile forward to make sure that no matter what, when the Juno lands, the ticks won't get in the way. There we go. Juno missile shuts off the tick spam, meaning that I can maneuver this guy in. Here it comes. Bedbug, oh, nice snipe on the sniper right there. Bedbug marching towards the facility, self-destruct, and boom goes the base of the purple commander. I was so proud of that play. So rare that I feel like you ever get a chance to get a good Bedbug connection in, and yeah, landing one against somebody's main production facility definitely feels quite nice. Second Bedbug, not so fortunate. Loses its life almost instantaneously and takes basically nothing with it. Capital ship also firing away at basically anything it can. You can see it's starting to fire away at this T2 facility here as well. It will be deconstructed. Nice. Metal saved as it's deconstructed over there, but for the time being, no T2 production from the Cyan commander either. Whole bunch of Marauder over here, I believe. Pushed on the left-hand side. It was Marauder or Salamander. It was some sort of amphibious unit pushed forward. It might have been, oh, it was Platypus, actually. A bunch of Platypus pushed forward on the left-hand side. They met the landmines and discovered why they're so powerful. Cool to see. Very cool to see. APHIS scaling, now continuing up the ladder. So yeah, if these cost almost 400 metal apiece, I mean, yeah, you know what? I'm starting to think the T1 energy production is worth more. Yeah, because if these, I mean, this total costs 6,000 or 6,000 metal. That's almost another APHIS worth of production. Very interesting. They are slightly more efficient. That's the thing. The density with which you can pack them is way higher. But that also does mean you stand to lose more. Anyway, sorry, we're missing a killer moment right here as the Yellow Commander Waterboy sends the fighters forward. A massive air pull right here, using that cloaking field to move the bombers forward. And just like that, bombers deploy on all of these E-converter patches, all of them lighting up in an instant as the bombers move forward towards the APHIS. The Blue Commander in loads of trouble. Boom goes the APHIS, sending that base up in smoke. Nuclear missile is launched, but the bombers headed towards the facility over here. Another massive bombing run. Boom goes the APHIS, but I want to catch the tail end of this. I remember exactly where this nuke went. Green base explodes right at the same moment as the red base does. All the production goes up in smoke right here for our Maroon Commander, K-Bot-Tron, losing the entire air battle right there. Very, very nicely done. Bomber's still not done yet either. With the air player taken out of commission, it means that these bombers are unhindered as they continue across the map. Going to start bombing down the Seafoam Green Commanders, or the Powder Blue Commanders base. Taking down the remainders of the blue base here as well. And you can see the blue team slowly starting to tap out of this game, realizing that with that bombing run, the economies have been vastly separated. E-converters popping, my goodness. It does leave you especially vulnerable to bombing runs, doesn't it? Bombers now headed over the hills. There are flak turrets though, and with the bombers dropping bombs from on high, it means they can throw them out from so far away that the flak turrets don't even have a chance to shoot them down before they deploy their payload. E-converters pop right there. Bombers harassing everybody, and it'll be Waterboy with the play of the game to win us this match. Beautifully, beautifully played right there. I love that wombo combo of the radar ships over here. We'll take a look at it one more time. You can see the leapfrogging of radar ships right here, so those fighters can take the path. You can see them all taking the radar jammer highway directly into the blue player's base. Beautifully done over there, winning myself the Trader Award, and Waterboy rightfully earning the Destroying Enemy Resource Award. What a fun match to play. Thanks a ton for watching. I sure hope you enjoyed, maybe gleaned something useful out of this, and I will see you in the very next game of Beyond All Reason. Peace out, everybody.